The janitor's closet door slammed shut with a metallic click that would echo through Jasmine Washington's career forever, but not in the way her tormentors expected. When the new black teacher's smartwatch detected her distress signals and automatically alerted emergency services at exactly 10:47 a.m., 17-year-old Tyler Bennett and his crew thought they'd pulled off the ultimate prank. They had no idea that in less than 8 minutes, a full SWAT team would storm Jefferson High's East Wing, turning their harmless joke into a federal incident that would expose the school's darkest secrets and transform one substitute teacher into the most feared educator in the district's history. The morning had started like any other disaster waiting to happen at Jefferson High School. Located in the affluent suburbs of Westchester County, the school boasted marble hallways and state-of-the-art facilities that masked a toxic culture of entitlement and cruelty. Jasmine Washington, 28 years old, with natural hair pulled into a professional bun, clutched her teaching credentials as she navigated the maze of lockers. This was supposed to be her fresh start, a 3-month substitute position covering for Mrs. Henderson's maternity leave. After 2 years of struggling to find steady work in education, she'd finally landed something that could lead to permanent employment. She dressed carefully that morning in her small studio apartment, pressed navy blazer, modest gray dress, sensible flats. Her mother had called at 6 a.m. from Detroit, voice thick with pride. "Baby, you show them what Washington women are made of," she'd said. "Remember, you're not just representing yourself in that classroom." Jasmine had promised to make her proud. Even as anxiety churned in her stomach, the reviews she'd found online about Jefferson High weren't encouraging. Words like challenging student body and unique disciplinary needs were educator code for good luck surviving. The previous night, she'd spent hours reviewing lesson plans, practicing her introduction speech in the mirror, and charging all her devices, including the medical alert smartwatch her overprotective sister had gifted her last Christmas. "It monitors your vitals," her sister had explained. "If your heart rate spikes too high or you're in distress, it automatically contacts emergency services with your GPS location." Jasmine had rolled her eyes then, thinking it excessive for a healthy 28-year-old. She'd only worn it to avoid another lecture about safety. Room 237 smelled like privilege and poor decisions. Energy drinks littered desks worth more than her monthly rent. Designer backpacks slouched against chairs like bored teenagers themselves. The bell rang at 8:15 a.m., and students filtered in with the enthusiasm of defendants approaching a courtroom. Jasmine stood at the front, spine straight, smile carefully calibrated to seem approachable but not weak. She'd learned that balance the hard way during her student teaching in inner-city Chicago. Too soft, and they'd destroy you. Too hard, and administration would label you difficult to work with. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Washington, and I'll be your American history teacher for the next 3 months." Her voice carried the slight Detroit accent she'd never quite shaken, each word carefully enunciated. A few students glanced up from their $1,200 phones. Most didn't bother. In the back row, Tyler Bennett sprawled across his desk like he owned it, which, considering his father had donated the new gymnasium, he practically did. Tyler was what happened when generational wealth met zero accountability. 6'2", varsity lacrosse captain, with the kind of casual cruelty that came from never hearing the word no. His father ran a hedge fund that managed assets worth more than some small country's GDP. His mother sat on every charity board from here to Manhattan, more concerned with appearances than her son's character. At 17, Tyler had already been expelled from 2 prep schools, but Daddy's checkbook always found him a soft landing. Jefferson High was his last stop before military school. Not that he was worried. He'd learned young that money didn't just talk, it screamed. "Yo, Miss Washington," Tyler called out, emphasis mocking on the "Miss." "Quick question, are you even old enough to be here? You look like you should be sitting with us, not teaching." Laughter rippled through his crew. Connor Phillips, whose mother was district superintendent, Blake Morrison, son of the police chief, and Mason Crawford, whose family owned half the commercial real estate in town. The 4 of them were untouchable, and they knew it. Jasmine had faced this before. Young, black, female-y, the trifecta that made certain students think she was an easy target. "I'm qualified to be here, Mr. Bennett," Now, if we could turn to page 47 in your textbooks. But seriously, Tuller interrupted, sitting up with fake concern. Did they run out of real teachers? Is that why they're letting anyone with a degree play pretend? More laughter. A few students shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. That was the thing about Tyler's Rignet. Wasn't just fear that kept people quiet, but complicity. Speaking against him meant social suicide in a school where your last name determined your future. The first week was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Every lesson Jasmine planned was sabotaged with surgical precision. PowerPoint presentations mysteriously crashed. Handouts disappeared from her desk during lunch. Someone kept changing her computer password, forcing her to call IT repeatedly. The harassment was careful, calculated, nothing that would leave evidence. Nothing she could definitively prove. When she tried to give Tyler detention for talking during a lecture, she received an email from Principal Morrison, Blake's uncle, naturally, suggesting she focus on building rapport rather than punitive measures. But it was the whispers that cut deepest. Comments about her hair when she wore it natural. Jokes about her modest clothing compared to the other teachers' designer outfits. Questions about whether she got the job through affirmative action. The words diversity hire followed her down hallways like a shadow. Other teachers offered sympathetic smiles but no support. Everyone knew challenging Tyler meant challenging the power structure that kept Jefferson High's donation funds flowing. Thursday morning of week 2 brought the first direct confrontation. Jasmine arrived to find her classroom door covered in printed email screenshots of her job application, her college transcripts, her LinkedIn profile. Someone had highlighted her student loan amounts, circled her GPA, added commentary in red marker, 3, 4, that's the best they could find, and state school trash, and bet she can't even afford a real apartment? Her hands shook as she tore them down. Stuffing the papers into her bag, the security cameras in this hallway had been malfunctioning all week. Rough morning. Miss Washington? Tyler lounged against the lockers. Connor filming on his phone. You know, if you need financial advice, my dad's firm has great internship programs. Might pay better than this. He gestured at her outfit, a clearance rack. Find she'd thought looked professional until now. Get to class. Tyler. Her voice stayed steady through sheer will. Or what? You'll write me up? He stepped closer, using his height advantage. Go ahead. See how fast that complaint disappears. You know Blake's uncle shreds anything with my name on it. Right? Face it. You don't belong here. Jefferson High has standards. And you. He looked her up and down with theatrical disgust. You're what happens when schools care more about checking boxes than quality. The smartwatch on her wrist registered her elevated heart rate, 120 beats per minute, a normal response to confrontation. Nothing that would trigger its emergency protocols. Not yet. That afternoon, Jasmine ate lunch in her classroom. Door locked. She'd given up on the teacher's lounge after overhearing Mrs. Pemberton 30-year veteran telling others, I'm not racist, but these diversity hires never last. They don't understand our culture here. Their culture? As if cruelty and elitism were traditions worth preserving. Jasmine stared at her peanut butter sandwich, all she could afford until payday, and wondered if her mother had been wrong. Maybe Washington women weren't made for places like this? Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. The text made her stomach drop. Give up yet, TB? Attached was a photo of her car in the parking lot. License plate visible. The implied threat was, clear, we know where you park. We know what you drive. We can reach you anywhere. She screenshot it, adding to a folder labeled evidence that grew thicker daily. Not that evidence mattered in a system designed to protect the Tyler Bennetts of the world. Week 3 started with cautious optimism. Tyler had been suspended for 2 days, not for harassing her, but for vaping in the bathroom. The classroom felt lighter without his presence, and Jasmine managed to get through actual lessons. A few students even participated, raising hands tentatively as if testing whether it was safe. Maria Gonzalez, scholarship student and valedictorian candidate, stayed after class Tuesday. Miss Washington, I just wanted to say, we're not all like him. Some of us appreciate what you're trying to do. Maria glanced at the door nervously. But be careful. Tyler's planning something for when he gets back. I heard Connor and Blake talking. Planning what? Maria shook her head. I don't know. But Tyler's angry about the suspension. It blames you. Says you're trying to ruin his lacrosse season. And when Tyler gets angry, she trailed off. But Jasmine could fill in the blanks. When Tyler got angry, people got hurt. The only question was how. Wednesday night. Jasmine sat in her apartment reviewing security protocols on her devices. She'd installed a recording app on her phone, backed up all her documentation to the cloud, and even looked into whether the school's insurance would cover legal representation. The smartwatch glowed on her wrist as she checked its settings, heart rate alerts, fall detection, emergency SOS all active. Her sister had texted earlier, "You wearing the watch like I told you?" "Yes, Mom." Jasmine had replied, adding an eye roll emoji she didn't feel. The truth was, the watch had become a comfort. Its weight reminded her that she wasn't entirely alone, that technology could be a lifeline when human beings failed you. She fell asleep, fully dressed, too exhausted to change. Dreams full of marble hallways that stretched forever, and laughter that echoed like judgment. Thursday morning arrived wrapped in fog that made the school look like something from a horror movie. Jasmine parked in her usual spot, noting the unusual emptiness of the lot. 7:45 a.m. Where was everyone? She gathered her materials, that folder of evidence now thick as a textbook, and headed inside. The hallways were eerily quiet, her footsteps echoing off polished floors. Even the usual clusters of early arriving students were absent. Room 237's door stood slightly ajar. Jasmine pushed it open to find her classroom transformed. Desks were overturned, her carefully organized papers scattered like confetti. Someone had spray-painted "Diversity Hire" across the whiteboard in red letters that dripped like blood. Her personal items, family photos, her college diploma, her teaching certificate lay shattered on the floor. But it was the printout taped to her chair that made her blood run cold. Her home address, photos of her apartment building, her daily routine mapped out in disturbing detail. "Surprise!" Tyler's voice came from behind. She spun to find him flanked by Connor, Blake, and Mason, effectively blocking the doorway. "Like what we've done with the place. Thought it needed some authentic urban decoration. Get out of my way." Jasmine's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Or what? You'll call security?" Blake laughed. "I texted Carl this morning. Told him my uncle needed him for an emergency off campus. He won't be back for hours." "You can't." "Can't what?" Tyler stepped into the room, his crew following. "Can't show you how things really work here? See? Miss Washington. Jefferson High runs on tradition, excellence, standards that have been maintained for generations. And then they hire someone like you, someone who got their degree from a state school, who can barely afford professional clothes, who thinks she can come here and change things. It's insulting." Jasmine's smartwatch registered her heart rate climbing, 130 beats per minute, still within normal stress parameters. Her hand moved toward her phone in her blazer pocket. "Looking for this?" Connor held up her iPhone, waggling it mockingly. "You really shouldn't leave your stuff unattended. Identity theft is a serious problem these days. Give that back." She took a step forward, but Mason moved to block her. "Here's what's going to happen," Tyler said conversationally, as if discussing homework. "You're going to resign. Today. You'll cite personal reasons or better opportunities or whatever excuse diversity hires use when they realize they're out of their league. My father's already lined up a proper replacement, Mrs. Ashford, Exeter alumni. Taught at Choate for 20 years. Someone who understands excellence. I'm not resigning." "No?" Tyler's smile turned predatory. "Then I guess we go with plan B. See? Blake's uncle isn't just principal. He's connected to the school board, the superintendent, the mayor. One word from him about your performance issues and you'll never teach in this state again. Connor's mom runs HR for the district. She can make sure your file is flagged as do not rehire. And my father, he golfs with the president of every private school from here to Boston. You'll be lucky to get work tutoring kindergartners." The smartwatch. 140 beats per minute. Jasmine felt sweat prickling her scalp despite the morning chill. 4 against 1. Exit blocked. No phone. Security conveniently absent. Her mind raced through options, finding none that didn't end badly. "Nothing to say?" Tyler moved closer. Where's all that teacher authority now? Where's the big bad educator who thought she could give me detention? He laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. You know what your problem is? You believe the diversity and inclusion bullshit. Thought your little degree and good intentions meant something here. But Jefferson High isn't for people like you, it's for people like us. People who matter. Everyone matters. Jasmine managed. God. You even sound like an after-school special. Tyler rolled his eyes. Connor. Show her the video. Connor held up his phone, angling it so Jasmine could see. Shaky footage of her classroom. A carefully edited compilation, her yelling at a student with the provocation cut out. Her struggling with technology, with the sabotage hidden. Her eating lunch alone, framed to look pathetic rather than professional. The video was titled, Diversity Hire Disaster. Why Jefferson High Needs Better Standards. 3 million followers on TikTok. Connor bragged. One upload and you're viral for all the wrong reasons. Good luck getting hired anywhere after becoming a meme. That's doctored footage. It's taken out of context. Who cares? Blake shrugged. Internet doesn't fact-check. By the time you try to explain, the damage is done. Unless, he paused dramatically, you resign. Today. Then the video disappears. Your record stays clean. And everyone wins. Jasmine's watch, 150 beats per minute. The room felt smaller. Air thicker. She thought of her mother's pride. Her sister's faith in her. The students like Maria, who deserved better than Tyler's reign of terror. Resignation would be easier. Safer. Smarter. But Washington women weren't made for easy. I said no. Tyler's face darkened. Wrong answer? Mason? Before Jasmine could react, Mason had maneuvered behind her. Connor and Blake pressed closer. Forming a tight circle, she was trapped. Surrounded by boys who'd grown up believing consequences were for other people. Her watch registered 160 beats per minute still, not enough to trigger emergency protocols. The algorithm was designed for heart attacks and falls, not slow-building panic. You know what? Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't think you understand your position here. Maybe you need some time to think it over. Alone. In the dark. The janitor's closet was 10 feet away. Door already propped open. Jasmine realized with crystal clarity what they intended. Don't. But they were already moving. Teenage athletes against one woman in professional attire. She tried to resist, heels skidding on polished floor. But physics wasn't on her side. They maneuvered her toward the closet with practiced ease. Had they done this before? To other teachers who didn't fit? This is kidnapping. She gasped. This is you taking a mental health break. Tyler corrected. Right. Guys? We came to class and found her acting erratic, talking to herself. We tried to help, but she locked herself in the closet. Teen witnesses versus unstable substitute teacher. Who do you think they'll believe? The closet smelled like industrial cleaner and decades of dust. Mops and buckets lined one wall. Metal shelving stacked with supplies on the other. No windows. One door. Lock on the outside. They shoved her in with casual efficiency. 4 sets of hands ensuring she couldn't grab the door frame. Couple hours should do it? Tyler mused as the door swung shut. Give you time to reconsider your career choices. Maybe practice your resignation speech. The lock clicked with finality. Darkness. Absolute except for the thin line of light under the door. Jasmine heard their laughter retreating. Connor saying something about breakfast at the country club. Then silence except for her own ragged breathing and the thundering of her heart. 170 beats per minute. 175. The space was maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. She could touch both walls with outstretched arms. No ventilation beyond the gap under the door. Already the air felt recycled, tainted with chemical fumes from cleaning supplies. Jasmine forced herself to breathe slowly, fighting the clawing panic that threatened to overwhelm rational thought. She'd been claustrophobic since childhood, ever since getting trapped in a basement during a tornado warning. Small spaces made her feel like she was drowning in air. 180 beats per minute. The smartwatch screen glowed in the darkness. A tiny beacon of technology. She pressed the side button, hoping to manually trigger an SOS. But her shaking fingers couldn't navigate the menu. Sweat made the interface slippery. The walls seemed to press closer. Optical illusion made real by panic. How long would they leave her? Hours? Until someone noticed she was missing? The school day hadn't even started. It could be afternoon before anyone questioned her absence. 185 beats per minute? That's when the smartwatch's algorithm finally decided something was wrong. Very wrong. Heart rate dangerously elevated for someone supposedly at rest. GPS, showing an unusual location inside a structure but not a classroom. Movement patterns suggesting distress. The artificial intelligence designed by some Silicon Valley programmer who'd never imagined this scenario nonetheless reached its conclusion. Medical emergency in progress. The watch vibrated once. A warning: emergency services will be contacted in 10 seconds unless canceled. The text glowed on the tiny screen. Jasmine tried to read it through. Tears she hadn't realized were falling. Tried to process what was happening. But her vision swam. 10 seconds passed, like 10 years. At exactly 10:47 a.m., the smartwatch executed its primary function. Protecting its wearer, it sent a priority alert to 911 dispatch with Jasmine's GPS coordinates, heart rate data, and pre-programmed medical information. The message was tagged as potential cardiac event, potential assault. Definici emergency. Jefferson High School. Room 237 vicinity. African-American female. Age 28. In severe distress. The first 911 call came from the smartwatch's automated system, but it wouldn't be the last. Dispatch officer Patricia Hoffman had worked Westchester County Emergency Services for 15 years. She'd handled everything from heart attacks to home invasions, developing an instinct for which calls needed immediate attention. The automated smartwatch alert made her sit straighter. GPS coordinates showed someone inside Jefferson High School, but the precise location was odd. Not a classroom or hallway, but what building schematics labeled as a maintenance area. Unit 14. What's your 20? Patricia called over the radio. Northbound on Maple? About 5 minutes from Jefferson High. Officer Rodriguez responded. Redirect immediately. We have a potential medical emergency with suspicious circumstances. African-American female. 28. Showing signs of extreme distress. Automated alert from a medical device. Copy that. En route, Patricia pulled up additional information. The smartwatch was registered to Jasmine, Washington. Address in the Riverside apartment complex, the affordable housing section of town. Teacher's license on file. Recently hired by Jefferson High. Something about the data pattern nagged at her. Heart rate consistent with panic attack or physical restraint. Location. Suggesting confinement. She'd seen enough domestic violence cases to recognize the signs. Unit 14. Approach with caution. Possible confinement situation. Understood. Requesting backup. Patricia hesitated. Jefferson High in affluent Westchester. Thursday morning, probably overreacting. Then again, her instincts had saved lives before. Affirmative. Silent approach. At 10:52 a.m., Officers Rodriguez and Chen arrived at Jefferson High's parking lot. The morning fog had lifted, revealing a campus that looked more like a college than a high school. Manicured lawns, pristine buildings, luxury cars in the student section. Rodriguez had graduated from the public school across town. Places like this made him uncomfortable with their casual display of wealth. Smartwatch GPS shows East Wing, ground floor. Chen read from her tablet. Near room 237. They entered through the main entrance, badges visible but weapons holstered. The secretary, Mrs. Goldstein, looked up with practiced politeness that faltered upon seeing uniforms. Officers, is there a problem? Wellness check. Rodriguez said smoothly. Teacher named Jasmine Washington. Is she in today? She should be. Mrs. Goldstein frowned at her computer. Her car's in the lot. But she hasn't checked in. These new teachers, honestly, no sense of protocol. Rodriguez and Chen exchanged glances. They moved deeper into the building, following GPS coordinates that led them down marble hallways lined with trophy cases and honor roll plaques. The East Wing was quieter. Classroom doors still closed. Room 237 stood open. Interior trashed. Jesus, Chen muttered, taking in the overturned desks and spray-painted slur. Call it in? Rodriguez was already on his radio. Dispatch. We have vandalism and signs of struggle at Jefferson High. Teacher still unaccounted for. Requesting. The sound cut him off. Muffled but unmistakable, someone pounding on a door from the inside. Both officers drew their weapons. Training. Taking over. The sound came again. Desperate and rhythmic. Chen pointed to the janitor's closet. Padlock hanging from the latch. Engaged. Ma'am? This is Westchester Police? Are you in there? The pounding intensified. Accompanied by sounds that might have been screaming or sobbing, Rodriguez holstered his weapon and examined the lock-basic padlock, probably grabbed from maintenance supplies. Stand back from the door, he called. Then to Chen, bolt cutters in the unit? I'll get them. She sprinted back toward the exit. Rodriguez stayed by the door, talking steadily. Ma'am, we're getting you out. Are you Jasmine Washington? One knock for yes. A single, forceful bang. Are you injured? One for yes. Two for no. 2 knocks. Though the breathing audible through the door suggested severe distress. We have bolt cutters coming. 2 minutes max. Keep breathing. Slow and steady. You're safe now. Inside the closet, Jasmine heard the words through a haze of panic and oxygen deprivation. Her smartwatch showed 190 beats per minute, dangerous for sustained duration. The darkness had taken on a physical weight, pressing against her chest. She'd clawed at the door until her nails broke, screamed until her voice cracked. The tiny space seemed to shrink with each breath, walls closing in like a trash compactor from some nightmare. Miss Washington? I'm Officer Rodriguez. Were you locked in there against your will? One knock. She couldn't form words past the tightness in her throat. Do you know who did this? One knock. Multiple people? One knock. Rodriguez's radio crackled. Officer, this is Principal Morrison. I understand there's some confusion. Sir? Please stay in your office. This is now a crime scene. Crime scene? That's rather dramatic for a simple misunderstanding. Rodriguez cut the transmission. He dealt with enough entitled administrators protecting their school's reputations. The bolt cutters arrived along with 4 more officers. The lock gave way with a metallic snap that sounded like justice. The door swung open, revealing Jasmine Washington crumpled on the floor. Professional clothes soaked with sweat, makeup streaked with tears, hands bloody from pounding on wood. Medical, Chen called immediately. We need medical now. But Jasmine was already pointing at her wrist, at the smartwatch still glowing with alerts. She managed one word through cracked lips. Recorded. Rodriguez knelt beside her while Chen established a perimeter. The watch recorded? Jasmine nodded. Fumbling with the device. Modern smartwatches could store hours of audio when activated. She'd triggered the recording function in the seconds before they'd shoved her inside. Some primitive instinct for self-preservation overriding panic. The entire confrontation, every threat and admission, was digitized on her wrist. They said no one would believe me. Her voice came out raw. Said I didn't belong here, that their parents would protect them. Who said that? Tyler Bennett, Connor Phillips, Blake Morrison, Mason Crawford. Each name felt like reclaiming power. They destroyed my classroom, threatened my career, locked me in here to force my resignation. Rodriguez helped her to her feet, noting how she swayed slightly. Adrenaline crash combined with hyperventilation. Ma'am, would you like to press charges? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jasmine thought of all the teachers before her who'd been driven out. All the students who'd suffered under Tyler's reign. All the times money and connections had trumped justice. She straightened her spine. Washington women didn't just endure, they prevailed. Yes, for false imprisonment, assault, harassment, vandalism, and conspiracy. Law school had been her second choice after education. She knew exactly what charges would stick, and I want every second of that recording preserved as evidence. The next hour unfolded like dominoes falling. Paramedics arrived to check Jasmine's vitals. Crime scene photographers documented the destroyed classroom. The smartwatch recording was transferred to evidence with chain of custody protocols. Word spread through Jefferson High like wildfire police cars in the parking lot. Room 237 wrapped in yellow tape. Miss Washington emerging from a closet looking like she'd survived a war. Students gathered in clusters. Phones out. Social media exploding. Number. Justice for Miss Washington started trending before noon. Maria Gonzalez live-streamed her testimony. Tyler Bennett has terrorized this school for years. Everyone knows, but no one does anything because his daddy's rich. Other students chimed in with their own stories, destroyed projects, threatened futures, and bribes and blackmail that kept the powerful in power. At 11:35 a.m., the announcement came over the intercom. Tyler Bennett, Connor Phillips, Blake Morrison, and Mason Crawford, please report to the main office immediately. In the country club across town, Tyler was 3 bites into Eggs Benedict when his phone exploded with notifications. His father calling, his mother texting in all caps, group chat lighting up with warnings from classmates. The TikTok Connor had threatened to post about Miss Washington had been replaced by footage of police leading them out of school in handcuffs. 3 million followers watching their empire crumble in real time. "Dad?" Tyler answered the phone with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Don't say a word." Richard Bennett's voice was cold fury controlled. "Lawyers are en route. Do not speak to anyone without representation present." But lawyers couldn't delete digital evidence, couldn't erase the recording where Tyler admitted to systematic harassment, where he'd revealed the network of protection that enabled his behavior, couldn't rewind the moment when technology, simple smartwatch, designed to monitor health, had become the weapon that pierced their armor of privilege. Principal Morrison tried damage control, but his relationship to Blake made him a liability. Superintendent Phillips found herself under investigation for potential corruption. Police Chief Morrison faced questions about why previous complaints against these students had vanished. The entire power structure of Jefferson High, built on donations and family names and generations of looking the other way, shook like a house of cards in an earthquake. By 2 p.m., news vans surrounded the school. "Smartwatch saves teacher," made for irresistible headlines. The story had everything: racial discrimination, abuse of power, technological triumph, and most importantly, a villain everyone could hate. Tyler Bennett's lacrosse photos were paired with his mugshot as Connor's TikTok followers turned on him en masse. Blake and Mason's college prospects evaporated as universities distanced themselves from the scandal. Jasmine sat in the police station, still wearing her sweat-stained blazer, giving her formal statement. The detective, a black woman named Sharon Williams, listened with barely concealed rage. "I've got daughters," she said quietly. "They face enough challenges without predators like these boys making it worse. We're going to nail them to the wall." The recording was damning. Every word captured in digital clarity. "Diversity hire? You don't belong here. People like us matter. My father's already lined up a proper replacement. You'll never teach in this state again." But it was the sound of the lock clicking. Be lock. Jasmine's escalating panic, the boys' laughter as they walked away. That's what would play in courtrooms and living rooms. What would transform public opinion from "boys will be boys" to "how did we let this happen?" The janitor's closet became evidence. Investigators found scratches on the inside of the door from Jasmine's attempts to escape. They documented the lack of ventilation, the chemical fumes from cleaning supplies, the psychological torture of confinement. What had been intended as a prank was revealed as criminal assault that could have ended in tragedy without the smartwatch's intervention. "Thing is," Detective Williams explained, "false imprisonment in New York carries up to 4 years. Add the hate crime enhancement for the racial element, conspiracy charges for planning it, assault for the physical restraint. These boys are looking at serious time. And that's before we investigate their previous victims, because Jasmine wasn't the first." As news spread, former teachers came forward. Mrs. Chen, who'd lasted 2 weeks before mysterious accusations forced her resignation. Mr. Jackson, the only black male teacher Jefferson had hired in a decade, driven out by relentless harassment. Miss Rodriguez, whose car had been vandalized until she transferred. All of them had faced Tyler's crew. None had possessed the digital evidence to fight back. The district launched an internal investigation that would eventually reveal a pattern of discriminatory hiring and retention practices. Jefferson High's 98% white teaching staff in a county that was 40% diverse wasn't coincidence, it was careful curation. The Bennett-Phillips-Morrison-Crawford alliance had influenced hiring committees, pressured administrators, and created a hostile environment for anyone who threatened their vision of excellence. At 4 p.m., Jasmine finally went home. Her sister had driven up from the city. enveloping her in a hug that smelled like cocoa butter and safety. "I knew that watch would save your life," she whispered. "Just not like this." They sat in Jasmine's tiny apartment, curtains drawn against the news vans that had found her address. The smartwatch still circled her wrist, its battery finally dying after hours of evidence preservation. Such a simple device of sensors and circuits and code that had done what human systems failed to do: protect the vulnerable from the powerful. "You know they'll come after you," her sister warned. "Rich families like that don't give up easy. Let them try." Jasmine's voice had found its strength again. "I've got recordings, witnesses, a crime scene, and something they never counted on: the truth." Her phone buzzed with messages of support: students like Maria organizing walkouts, teachers from other schools offering solidarity, civil rights organizations volunteering legal support. The story had transcended Jefferson High, becoming a symbol of every time wealth and power had crushed those who dared challenge the status quo. That evening, Richard Bennett appeared on local news, navy suit impeccable, expression grave. "My son made a terrible error in judgment," he read from prepared notes. "We're cooperating fully with authorities and seek a resolution that serves justice while recognizing the potential for redemption in young people who've lost their way." Translation: lawyers were negotiating plea deals. The recording made trial too risky. Better to accept reduced charges than chance a jury's verdict after hearing Jasmine's panic, the boys' laughter, the casual cruelty of privilege weaponized. But the Bennetts had miscalculated public sentiment. Number Justice for Miss Washington had evolved into number Clean Up Jefferson. Parents who'd been silent about the toxic culture found their voices. School board meetings that typically drew dozens now hosted hundreds. The comfortable arrangement where money bought immunity faced scrutiny that campaign contributions couldn't silence. 3 days later, Jasmine returned to Jefferson High. Different classroom room, 237, remained sealed, but same determination. She wore the same navy blazer, cleaned and pressed, with one addition: the smartwatch. Fully charged, students stood when she entered, some applauding, others just staring at the woman who'd brought down the untouchables. "I know this week has been unusual," she began, voice steady. "But American history is full of unusual weeks that changed everything. The Boston Tea Party, Seneca Falls, Selma. Moments when ordinary people stood up to extraordinary injustice." Maria raised her hand. "Were you scared? In the closet? Terrified?" Jasmine didn't sugarcoat it, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. And sometimes, courage is just wearing a smartwatch your sister gave you and refusing to quit when they want you gone. The lesson that day covered the 14th Amendment, equal protection under law, how it had been written after the Civil War but taken decades to enforce, how technology and documentation had always been tools of justice, from Frederick Douglass's photographs to television cameras in Birmingham, how progress came not from comfort but from confrontation. Tyler's empty desk spoke volumes. He'd been released on $50,000 bail, confined to house arrest with ankle monitoring, another piece of technology keeping someone where they belonged. Connor, Blake, and Mason faced similar restrictions. Their lacrosse season was over. Their college dreams dissolved. Their futures now included convicted felon on every application. But more importantly, their reign had ended. Students who'd lived in fear found their voices. Teachers who'd been driven out sought reinstatement. The power structure that had seemed immortal proved mortal after all because one woman wore a smartwatch and refused to disappear quietly. The trials wouldn't happen for months, but the verdicts felt inevitable. Too much evidence, too much public attention, too many victims emerging from silence. The families would negotiate pleas that included jail time and not years, but enough to matter, enough to send a message that in the digital age, privilege provided less protection than ever before. Jasmine taught through the semester, each day easier than the last. The vandalized classroom became a memorial of SWAT students, leaving notes of support, flowers, printed screenshots of their own resistance. Tyler's locker was reassigned, his name removed from trophy cases, his shadow lifting from hallways that suddenly felt brighter. The smartwatch company sent her a new model, top of the line, with a handwritten note from the CEO: "Thank you for showing the world that our technology protects more than just hearts, it protects justice." She wore it every day, A reminder that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected sources. Other schools reached out with job offers, districts wanting to show their commitment to diversity, their zero tolerance for harassment. Jasmine considered them all but decided to stay at Jefferson High. Not forever, but long enough to ensure the changes stuck. Long enough to mentor Maria and students like her. Long enough to prove that Washington women didn't just survive, they transformed the spaces that tried to break them. The janitor's closet was eventually cleaned out and repurposed as a technology storage room. Someone suggested installing a plaque, but Jasmine vetoed it. "I don't want to be remembered for being locked in a closet," she said. "I want to be remembered for what happened after I got out." What happened after was revolution in slow motion. Policy changes that required external oversight of discrimination complaints. Diversity initiatives with actual teeth. Scholarship programs for students like Maria, teaching workshops on recognizing and preventing harassment. The Bennett Phillips Morrison Crawford machine dismantled piece by piece, replaced by systems that valued merit over money. The 4 boys eventually served their time: 6 months in juvenile detention, 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service in the very neighborhoods they'd sneered at. Tyler's father quietly moved the family to Connecticut. His reputation in ruins. Connor's TikTok account was permanently banned after repeated violations. Blake and Mason finished high school through online programs, their dreams of Ivy League acceptance replaced by community college reality. But the real victory wasn't in their punishment. It was in the prevention of future victims. Every student who felt safe speaking up, every teacher who knew harassment would be investigated, every administrator who understood that protecting predators carried consequences. The culture shift that made Jefferson High's halls safer for everyone who didn't fit the previous definition of belonging. 1 year later, Jasmine stood before a packed auditorium. She'd been asked to speak at the district's annual diversity conference, sharing her story with educators from across the state. The smartwatch circled her wrist as she adjusted the microphone, its presence both talisman and reminder. "People ask me if I regret what happened," she began. "If I wish I'd just resigned that morning, avoided the trauma. And honestly, sometimes I do." PTSD doesn't care about moral victories. Anxiety doesn't check whether justice was served before keeping you up at night. The audience leaned in, recognizing honesty over inspiration. But then I think about Maria Gonzalez, valedictorian of Jefferson High, heading to Princeton on full scholarship. I think about the 3 black teachers hired this year who won't face what I faced. I think about the students who wear their natural hair without comment, who speak their minds without fear, who know that bullies can be stopped. She touched the smartwatch unconsciously, a gesture that had become habit. Technology saved me that day. Not just the emergency alert, but the recording that proved truth in a world that favors convenient lies. Yet technology alone wasn't enough. It took people choosing courage over comfort, students testifying despite social pressure, officers who investigated thoroughly instead of minimally, prosecutors who didn't let wealth water down justice, a community that decided that's how it's always been wasn't good enough anymore. The speech continued for 20 minutes, weaving together themes of justice and technology, tradition and transformation. But the line that would be quoted, shared, and remembered was simple. They thought locking me in a closet would make me disappear. Instead, it made them visible. Every cruel word recorded, every witness ready to speak, every excuse shattered. They gave me darkness, but I was wearing light on my wrist, the light of truth that no amount of privilege could extinguish. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, young teachers approached with stories of their own struggles, their own moments of choosing to stay or go. Jasmine listened to each one, offering advice and encouragement, sharing lawyer contacts and documentation strategies, acid, building the network that hadn't existed when she'd needed it. As she drove home that evening, past Jefferson High's manicured grounds, she noticed the changes, the new security cameras that actually worked, the diverse faces streaming from athletic practices, the absence of fear that had once hung over the parking lot like smog. Not perfect, no place ever was, but better. Demonstrably, measurably better. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler Bennett. She'd unblocked the number after the trials. Some part of her curious if he'd ever reach out. The message was brief. "I'm sorry. Not for getting caught. For everything before that, you were right. Everyone matters. She didn't respond. Redemption was his journey to make, not hers to validate, but she saved the message, adding it to the folder of evidence that had become a folder of transformation. Proof that even the most entrenched systems could change when confronted with undeniable truth. The smartwatch glowed in the darkness as she parked at her apartment, still the same building, though she could afford better now. Staying felt like honoring where she'd been while building toward where she was going. Inside, she set the device on its charger, watching the battery icon fill with power. Such a simple thing, circuits and sensors and code, but also a shield, a sword, a beacon in the darkness of a janitor's closet. Tomorrow, she'd teach American history to students who no longer feared speaking truth to power. She'd wear her navy blazer and sensible shoes, and the smartwatch that had saved more than just her life. She'd stand before room 237, now restored and renamed the Justice Classroom by student vote, and continue the work of education that was always about more than dates and facts, because Jasmine Washington had learned the most American lesson of all, that democracy wasn't a gift from the powerful but a constant struggle by the people, that justice wasn't guaranteed but demanded, that sometimes the smallest acts of resistance, wearing a smartwatch, refusing to resign, surviving long enough for help to arrive, could topple the tallest towers of privilege. The janitor's closet had been meant as her tomb. Instead, it became her chrysalis. She'd entered as a substitute teacher, hoping to make rent. She'd emerged as a symbol of every educator who'd faced discrimination, every student who'd been silenced, every person who'd been told they didn't belong in spaces they had every right to occupy. They'd locked her in darkness. She'd emerged wearing light, and in that transformation, Jefferson high-end, everyone who'd enabled its toxic culture, learned that in the 21st century, the truth had tools they'd never imagined. The revolution hadn't been televised. It had been recorded on a smartwatch, downloaded as evidence, uploaded as justice, and streamed live as change. 5 years later, the janitor's closet incident had become required reading in education programs across the country. Case study number 47, in Technology and Social Justice. Analyzed by future teachers who would never know the suffocating darkness, the chemical smell of fear, the way prejudice could lock doors from the outside. Jasmine had moved on to become principal of a struggling inner-city school, bringing with her the hard-won lessons of Jefferson High. The smartwatch still circled her wrist, upgraded now, but carrying the same purpose. On her desk sat a small framed photo. Her first class after the incident, Maria Gonzalez front and center. 32 faces representing a future Tyler Bennett had tried to prevent. The 4 boys had served their time and scattered to the winds. Tyler worked construction in Colorado, honest labor that his father considered beneath a Bennett. Connor taught computer literacy at a community center, his viral fame redirected toward digital ethics. Blake and Mason had simply vanished into the anonymity they'd once feared more than death. But their legacy lived on in the policies they'd forced into existence. The Washington Protocols, as they'd become known, mandatory recording devices in all administrative meetings, external oversight of discrimination complaints, automatic investigation of resignation patterns among minority teachers. Sometimes, late at night when PTSD knocked, Jasmine would touch the watch face and remember. Harvard-trained lawyers with Hermes briefcases had been defeated by a $28 monthly data plan and a sister's overprotective gift. Technology hadn't just saved her, it had rewritten the rules of power itself. And that revolution was just beginning.